morning, Americans. Here we are on Friday, May 10th. TGIF. Me and Bubba here are looking at the day. It rained yesterday. It's supposed to rain today. He's waiting for his birdies, the Blue Jay, and all the other friends. Anyway, I wanted to do a video today for you Americans, especially. So you can tell your friends, the dum-dums, you know, Democrats, but dum-dums, uh, what mess they're going to create. So here we go. I'll call it impeachment. The consequences after. Have you ever thought what the consequences are going to be if you impeach President Trump? Let me give you a precedent and history examples of what happened before. Well, in 1868, the dumb Republicans, otherwise known as radical Republicans, wanted to impeach Andrew Johnson because ever since 1865, they embarked on let's kill the South and make them pay for this war. So by killing the Souths, they did everything to make them live in shanty towns, and especially with the African Americans. Let's give them everything they wanted and a lot more. So let's give them the right to vote, the right to own land, the right to be state representatives, the right to be governors and representatives to the states. Okay. And mind you, they did this without the South even having representation to say anything about it. So in 1868, remember that President Johnson was a Democrat on what they called the Union ticket back in 1864. So when Lincoln got killed, he decided, hey, no, this is not what the President Lincoln wanted. But he didn't know what President Lincoln wanted. Nobody knew because he kept that close to his vest. But the radicals were there, especially Secretary of War Stanton. So they passed this law that didn't allow President Johnson to do anything. This is the reverse of what we have today. Congress invading the executive branch. So it was the reverse back then. And President Johnson told him to go stick it, so they went and impeached him. And the articles were, if you looked at them and today, and even in his own time, were found to be one-sided and political, not worth impeaching for. Anyway, they did do the impeachment, and the Senate was there. What the Republicans didn't count was some of their members voted no, especially the last one, the senator from Kansas, Edmund Ross. And the reason why he voted no, he tells you in his memoirs, is it was a one-sided deal, and it was very political. It would hurt the country, and it would have hurt the country. He didn't know how, but it did, because President Johnson got acquitted. And by the way, 10 of the 11 states from the Confederacy had not been readmitted to the Union yet in 1868. So there was no representation there from the South. Okay? So the Republicans went on their way. They knew that Grant was going to win easily because of this fact in 1868, which he did. Served 2 terms, which were lousy. The radical Republicans had their way with everything. And you had corruption all the way around on Grant's administration. In 1876, James Tilden won. And, well, that became the backroom deal, which I've told you before, that cost you African Americans everything. So that was the cost of that impeachment. Richard Nixon. The cost of his articles of impeachment was he resigned before he even attempted, because he knew that the Republicans in the Senate didn't have the backbone to stand up for him. And they would vote no. And he would be impeached. Okay. But on the other hand, impeachment, what does that do to government? Well, it slows you down, have absolutely nothing. Well, in the last 10 plus years, since 2009, I would say this government has done absolutely L0. Well, if you count Bush's 2 years, L0. So in the last 20 years, basically almost. Zero was done because of one thing or another. But can you imagine being President Gerald Ford and having Richard Nixon account for 50% of his daily things, and the White House government business wasn't being done? So he had no choice but to pardon Richard Nixon before the House and the Democrats went after him. And he knew that was going to cost him the election because, anyway, it was going to cost the Republicans the election. Uh, Imagine, okay, so it also cost the Democrats. They didn't realize it. But in 1976, they had all these other Democrats running like today. You got your what's it, who's it, a few she-he's in there running, and Creepy Joe. But who won the 76 election? Jimmy Who! And that was the worst thing that happened to the Democrats. Because as you know, 20% interest rates came down the line. You had Iran hostage situation there, the hostages, remember that? And all kinds of other things that happened there between 1977 and 81. So it brought the Reaganites in, which had skipped the election because they didn't like the fact that the regular Republicans voted for Ford, not them. That messed up the Republican Party, and it's still messed up today, and that's why you got no backbone Republicans. Then, so that was a cost that you have, and we're still bearing it today from that impeachment. Clinton impeachment was a joke. There's no cost there. It was just a stupid idea by the Republicans. But today, what happens today if you impeach Trump? Well, you're less than 2 years away from an election, and Trump's going to do the best he can to hold on. If he holds on, and no articles of impeachment are ever presented, you House representatives are going to have to talk to the American people about doing nothing but investigations. And Trump will have his deplorables there. So he'll win again. Then you have 4 more years of terrible. Can't impeach him again, can you? Okay. What happens if you do impeach him? Number one, if you get articles like you did for Richard Nixon that force him to resign, what's Vice President Pence going to do? He'll have no choice but to pardon Richard Nixon because his office will be so blooded with Trump stuff, it would be disastrous. And that'll kill your investigations in New York, wouldn't it? Yeah, big time. Well, you see, Americans, this is the situation you got. Helter-skelter. So what are you going to do? Tell those dum-dums. And by the way, vote some of those dum-dums out. And don't vote Republicans back in. Find some candidates that are independent, neither one of the parties. And get yourself straight, huh? Thanks. This is your favorite alien saying bye.